I hope everyone had a restful, labor-free Labor Day weekend. I did, visiting my daughter Sarah and her husband Ryan at his family cottage. But we are back into the ho-hum of everyday life. We've had to put away our white clothes for another year. Still though, we have the best season to look forward to. Fall, I think anyway, with all the changing colors and the fresher air. But we always need help at any time of the year. Challenges come up, and so it is here that ancient wisdom is shared. It's ancient, but it can still prove to be very helpful. With that in mind, a story. After telling the children a story of Adam and Eve, a Sunday school teacher asked them to draw a picture. One little boy drew a Cadillac with 3 people in it. When told it had nothing to do with the story, he looked up in astonishment and replied, "But you said God drove them out of the garden." All our lives, we will need to have our understanding of things, issues clarified. If we don't, there's a good chance that we will remain misinformed. And we may find ourselves being embarrassed by our ignorance, acting in an inappropriate manner, always thinking that we know everything, that we have got the manual on how to live a good life down pat. But none of us do. Life is a continual learning process from the day we were born until the moment when we wake to find ourselves in another place that we can only dimly imagine. And here together is one of the places that we can continue to discover best how to respond to those challenges in life. Psalm 2 tells us that if we seek out God's direction, then we will understand and become wiser, taking the right paths, making informed decisions and choices. So let's now open our minds and hearts to any insights that might be shared today in song, in prayer, or reflection. So come to hear the word, come to do the word, come to experience comfort, come to experience challenge, come to find cost, come to find joy, come to find humanity, come to find community, come to find church, come to find God. Let's just take a moment now to invite God to meet us in the places where we are, that we have created holy ground out of. Gracious God, we meet in these places knowing that you are always present with us through the Spirit. We come knowing that in the word shared, in the hymns sung, in the prayers offered up, we will find at least a tidbit of insight, some assurance, some learning, some comfort that will leave us changed people when we leave here. So meet us now and lead us through our worship time and then out into the week ahead with renewed strength and a new knowledge of how your love can be shared. To these goals, we now add the words that Jesus gave us, but singing them. Fall is the best time of year to go for a walk, whether it's on your own property, out at Cap Kigawan, on a trail on Crown Land, along a riverbank, or just a local back road. There's a lot to hear, a breeze rustling the leaves still on trees, the crunch of the fallen ones under our feet, geese proclaiming their farewells, maybe an animal scurrying in the undergrowth. Perhaps it's water trickling or even cascading over the rocks. They are such soothing, calming sounds. And there's so much to see. There's a larger picture, the trail that lies before us, which is crossed quickly by a chipmunk, a wide open field that has been harvested, but with geese still trying to find the last grain to bulk them up for the long flight ahead. The view over a wide river or lake, perfectly calm, with a resident loon taking a last swim. Yet what do we miss? I think perhaps the individual aspects, the trees and plants that perhaps have always been there, but whose identities, names we have never sought out. Yes, we know birch trees, but are they white or yellow? Is that a pin or a red oak? What kind of maple are we looking at? Do we know the difference between a pin cherry and a choke cherry? An ironwood and a hawthorn? The various kinds of ash trees? What are the differences between the large-tooth aspen and a trembling aspen? So many different kinds of trees and shrubs and plants, each with their own special name, perhaps with their own special purpose. If Adam named the animals, did he just continue on naming all things in nature? Well, not all. Did you know that there are actually some which have been given names inspired by more recent fictional characters? Oscar the Grouch inspired the Stelis, Oscar Grouchier, Caracaramens, and Samog the dragon from The Hobbit inspired the name Dracula Samog. Are we thankful for them, despite their weird names? Or perhaps that they have fallen on our car, or plugged our drains with their roots? Take a walk. Pause to see something that is new. Take Plant Snap of it on your phone app and learn about it. Because it was entrusted to us to care for, just like each of us has a special name, and we are entrusted with each other's care. Because we're all treasured and special in God's sight, each with our own special gifts and talents, and always, always in need of help. Like the trees and shrubs, We should never lump people into one category. We should take time to know another's story, the history of their people, the challenges they face that are different from our own, just as an elm tree has been susceptible to a disease while the maple standing next to it goes unaffected. Take a walk. Note the differences in what is growing around you, the size, the shape, the color, the purpose, and be grateful for this variety in this season of Thanksgiving.
This week's reading is from Proverbs chapter 22, verses 1 and 2, 8 and 9, and 22 and 23. A good name is more desirable than great riches. To be esteemed is better than silver or gold. Rich and poor have this in common. The Lord is the maker of them all. Whoever sows injustice reaps calamity, and the rod they wield in fury will be broken. The generous will themselves be blessed, for they share their food with the poor. Do not exploit the poor because they are poor, and do not crush the needy in court, for the Lord will take up their case and will exact life for life.
What's in a name? A name is really just a word composed of letters that brought together and make a sound. The same sound each time. For instance, there's the name Paul. But then we know many Pauls. We have Paul de Jong. We have Enemy Paul, the leader of the Green Party. We know of the Apostle Paul, who laid the foundation of the Christian church. And then we have the infamous Paul Bernardo. We have Mary Skippers. There is Mary of Magdala and Mary Queen of Scots. And then there's the infamous Mary Cotton from England, who disposed of 20 victims. They were all Pauls or Marys, but when we place them side by side, they display few similarities with their name mates. It's funny, too, how much baggage a name can carry. When some of us were going through options for our babies' names, how many of them got dismissed because of someone we knew who had that name who we didn't care for? For instance, how many baby girls were named Carla in the mid-90s, or after the scheming Delilah in the Bible? But the reverse is also the same. How many children are named after someone we admire? That doesn't guarantee, of course, that they will be like that person, display the same qualities. It is a way, though, of honoring that person. There must be something that we admired in them. In the end, it is the person who bears those letters, that name, who is important. No matter how many other people in the world carry your name, each is different. You are the only you. And the reputation you create is yours alone and will be what others come to know you by. A reputation is sometimes a very fragile thing. Sometimes it takes a lifetime to build and it can disappear in a single moment. It can be made or destroyed by a judgment that a person makes based on another's actions as they see them. Fair? Unfair? Does it matter sometimes? What others see and hear about us through what we do and say is how our good name comes to be known. So what qualities do we want people to remember us by? We're told that Solomon wrote in Proverbs 22 some of the characteristics that we might want people to see in us when they call us by our names. Those first two verses that Randy read might suggest that we want our name to carry honor. Thomas Carlyle said, "Show me the man you honor, and I will know what kind of man you are." A story. There was a headline in a newspaper, "The most exciting moment of my life." Under it was a picture of Jack Nicklaus. He was writing out a $5,000 check for charity. Now you understand that was a fair length of time ago. Turned out, though, that it was the second $5,000 check that he wrote that day. It happened because of a game of golf that he lost to a man by the name of Charlie Boswell. He was a man blinded in World War II, but over 9 holes he could shoot par golf. He hit a ball he couldn't even see. The caddy would rattle the pin in the cup, and the noise told him where to putt. Anyway, Jack Nicklaus was in town to help raise money for a charity, and he gave the $5,000. Later, at a banquet honoring Nicklaus for his help, Charlie Boswell stood up at his table. And he said, "Mr. Nicklaus, they tell me that you play a little golf." "Well," he said, "I've been known to play a round or two." "So do I, and I think I can beat you. I'll play you 9 holes of golf. If you can beat me, I'll give $5,000 to this charity. And if I beat you, you give another $5,000. And to make the contest fun," he said, "exciting and fair, you choose the course where we play, and I'll choose the time we play." Can you guess what time Charlie chose? Nighttime, of course. The Birmingham paper had a full-length picture of Jack Nicklaus writing out his second $5,000 check. The headline said, "The most exciting moment of my life." Someone asked Nicklaus about that headline. Why had he made that statement? "You have won every trophy, award, honor, accolade. Why would this be so exciting?" Nicklaus replied, "I met a person today who refuses to let fear control his life." He felt honored to be in the presence of this man. How can we gain respect and honor for our names? Well, it can come through high ethical and moral conduct, integrity. It comes to us when we adhere to a high standard of justice, responsibility that's derived from our observance of Christ's imperatives. It comes to us when we do things for others, big or small. And it's not in just the great things that can be done, but in the small ones. Jack Nicklaus honored Charlie Boswell for his strength of character that he combined with his good works. And you and I will be honored as assets to God through our work. How are we doing? In verses 8 and 9, it is suggested that we might want our names to be synonymous with generosity. A young African boy listened carefully as his teacher explained to the class why Christians give presents to each other on Christmas Day. The teacher said, "The gift is an expression of joy over the birth of Jesus and friendship for one another." When Christmas Day arrived, the young boy waited around after class to see his teacher. When everyone had left, he handed her a seashell of exquisite beauty. The beauty startled the teacher, and she inquired where he had found such an unusual shell. And he told her that there was only one spot where this particular shell could be found, in a certain bay several miles away. "Well, it's gorgeous, but you shouldn't have walked all that way to get a gift for me," the teacher told him. His dark eyes sparkled as he answered, "Long walk part of the gift." Generosity means sacrificial giving that comes from deep within us. It's about giving beyond what we first think we can spare. Not just financial help, but of our time and energy. I really think that there are few people who come out of an experience where they've been generous feeling lousy. Most times our spirits are uplifted. Sometimes we may feel like kicking up our heels because of what we've been able to do for another. And God surely smiles at what our generosity has achieved in Christ's name. Verses 22 and 23 suggest that we might want our names to be synonymous with compassion. A young nurse writes of her learning pilgrimage. She discovered how to see in a patient the image of God beneath a very distressing disguise. Eileen was one of her first patients. She was totally helpless. A cerebral aneurysm had left her with no conscious control over her body. As near as the doctors could tell, Eileen was totally unconscious, unable to feel her pain, unaware of anything going on around her. It was a job of the hospital staff to turn her every hour to prevent bed sores and to feed her twice a day through a stomach tube. Caring for her was considered a thankless task. When it's this bad, an older student nurse told her, "You have to detach yourself emotionally from the whole situation." As a result, more and more, Eileen became to be treated as a thing. But this young student nurse decided that she couldn't treat this patient like others had treated her. She talked to Eileen, sang to her, encouraged her, and even brought her little gifts. One day when things were especially difficult, and it would have been easy for the young nurse to just take out her frustrations on the patient, she was especially kind. It was actually Thanksgiving. And the nurse said to Eileen, "I was in a cruddy mood this morning because it was supposed to be my day off. But now that I'm here, I'm glad. I wouldn't have wanted to miss seeing you on Thanksgiving." Just then the telephone rang. And as the nurse turned to answer it, she looked quickly back to Eileen. Suddenly, she writes, "Eileen was looking at me, crying, and she was shaking all over." That was the only human emotion Eileen had ever showed any of them. But it was enough to change the whole attitude of the hospital staff towards her. Not long afterwards, she died. The young nurse said, "I keep thinking about her. It occurred to me that I owe her an awful lot. Except for Eileen, I might never have known what it's like to give myself to someone who can't give back." We should question if we are living in a world that is lacking in real compassion. Are people more apt to think and act only for themselves? Sometimes it seems as if all we want to do is shove to get to the head of the line. Let somebody else be the last. Who cares? They'll eventually get there. At least that's what we convince ourselves of. Somebody will help them. Somebody with more resources than you or I. But we are called to support those who hurt in the world. And the thing is that it's not just through our generosity, as great as that is. Generosity is our very real resource, our very real response to people's physical needs. But compassion is the reason for our generosity. It's a recognition of a deeper problem, that many are no longer able to find the face of God with us in each other. We're not seeing the hurt, the bleeding, and the dying world through Jesus' eyes. Sure, we need to see and provide for the external needs, food, shelter, medicine, etc., to those in need. But we also need to provide for their inner needs. The acknowledgement that we are all part of one human family, that we are all loved and valued and will care as a result for all of its members. That's what compassion is all about. Do you remember Jesus' encounter with the Syrophoenician woman? She wanted him to cast a demon out of her daughter. At the time he was sitting down having a meal. And he said, "Let the children be fed first, for it is not fair to take the children's food and throw it to the dogs." Jesus here was caught with his compassion down. Eventually he'd get to her. There were others more important to him than her. That's what he seemed to be saying. You're low down on my list, just a foreigner. Jesus is usually so mind-blowingly impressive, usually, that we can forget he did not emerge from the womb fully grown. And neither do we. Learning how to live so that we'll develop a good name for ourselves, a sterling reputation before others and God, is a lifelong learning process. And I like to think that in large part, much of what happens when we meet together, whether on Sunday or at the other times of the week when some of us may gather, learning happens when we talk, when we reflect, and then act on what we've come to understand as Christ's ministry call that he's passed on to us. The process of establishing a reputation is based primarily on our actions, the why and the what we do. What we did yesterday, what we do today, what we will do in the future will determine what people think of us, as well as how we will be remembered. May we seek the Spirit's help as we go about establishing our reputations, whether it's in this community, in this country, in the world. Because we all need to experience and give our generous and compassionate help to those we meet. He gave us so much in the way of helpful advice. He gave us so many stories to ponder. He gave us his own good example many times to live by. May we give so that his teachings may continue to be heard by us and others. God, your generous provision for us goes way beyond the limits. May we give as you give, to foster compassion, to enlighten through teaching, to encourage talent, to empower the rejected, to fire up the dejected, to follow the way of Jesus, and to proclaim his saving grace to all. Amen. Someone expressed their concern that they didn't know what is happening in the lives of those in our faith community when we don't gather for services in the church. But because our services are out there for the world to see on YouTube, if it should so desire, we need to protect people's privacy because they might not want someone to know what's happening in their lives. So if you want or don't mind something to be shared, some news, some glorious news, some news that you might need to share because you need people's prayers, please let me know at either my phone number or at my email address. And I want to thank Steve Bailey, who turned up the other day just in time to take over the washing of the front doors to the church. It was a job that took a little bit of arm muscle in there, but we're planning on painting the doors, and so it was a job that I thank him very much for. And things are getting back to normal here at the church. The quilters are back on Thursdays, and they will be joined in the evenings from 5 to 7 by the Brownies and Guides. So we welcome them all back. And as I say, if there's anything else you'd like to share with me, please give me a call. And I guess we can, again, turn to God, the Spirit, whomever we like to commune with, and share a few words. God, the clamor of the world surrounds us. Cell phones ringing incessantly around us. TVs blare with little that's really watchable. News announcers blading distressing news. Maybe it's just voices that love to complain, to criticize, to demand. Help us to shut them out. And instead listen for voices that raise up life as an opportunity to serve as Christ's hands and feet, to find the joy in life. Regardless of the topic, the issue, or interest, help us to make informed decisions by listening, especially to your Son's voice, but also to those who know his way through personal experience. Bless our children as they settle back into their school routines. It is our hope that in everything they will do and say, they will hear your voice speaking to them first, encouraging them to play fairly, to include everyone, and to strive to do their best. We trust that those among us and those we know who are going through difficult times, that they will also hear your comforting words and sage advice. And through them, may their anxieties lessen, their worries dissipate, at least a little. Help them to understand that you are present in their lives through the care and compassion of others. As we listen to the news from other areas around the world, because it's not always just about us, remind us that while you are known to others by different names, Her hopes and dreams are the same for all of us. To live in harmony and with respect, to desire equality and justice for all, and that we all care for your creation together. These things we hold up for your care and consideration. So be these things. As we head out into our daily lives, may we go out to do justice in our own small way. May we get above the noise and the obstruction of the crowd and find places where God is present in an ever-changing world, knowing that we do not go alone. But we need to live in an inclusive community where we are all treated equally. And over and above all, may we know that during all this activity, God is around us, Jesus walks with us, and the Holy Spirit is beside and within us.